It is unfortunate to see your fish die in your pond because every fish farmer expects to make profit, and once you lose your fish or there's high mortality in your farm, you are losing greatly, because the ultimate goal of every fish farmer is to make profit. But the good news is that you can be able to protect and manage your farm very well to avoid mortality if you take these 15 common causes of fish mortality in aquaculture and how to solve them. Because understanding the root cause of an issue is more than halfway of solving the issue. So I will not waste so much time. I will dive into the 15 common causes of fish mortality in aquaculture, and I also provide you with solutions. First and foremost, poor water quality. Water quality is very paramount when it comes to fish farming, because for fish, water is life. Jeopardize with the quality of your water and you stand a chance of losing all your fish. I want to talk about poor water quality. Water that lacks the nutrient and requirement or the parameters for fish are the poor water. Because every water for fish should have adequate nitrogen, adequate oxygen, adequate pH level. All these combine to have a good water. So make sure that the source of water has all these parameters. And take note, excessive of these parameters sometimes also dangerous. For instance, ammonia is good for fish, but excessive of it is dangerous and can cause mortality. So to get this solved, always test your water, and you notice that the parameters are not balancing or not the same. You change the water or try to make provision to correct that before you proceed. And do not just take any source of water for your fish. Make sure you know that that source is good and healthy for fish. The second has to do with low dissolved oxygen. Like we all know, every living organism needs oxygen in one way or the other, and that is also applicable to fish. They need enough dissolved oxygen in the water. As they are living in the water, they also breathe, and they absorb water, and they absorb oxygen that is dissolved in the water. So if the oxygen in the water is very low or there's no oxygen at all, you will find the fish suffocating and finally will die. So make sure that you have adequate dissolved oxygen in your pond. And to have that, you can introduce aeration systems that will add oxygen to the already natural oxygen, and that way you will be sure that your fish has enough oxygen. The third one is overfeeding and nutritional imbalance. I want to talk about overfeeding. That is feeding your fish or giving your fish feed more than they require at a time. Yes, and to feed your fish, make sure that you don't just come and pour your feed in there in the name of measured fish, because it is not all the time that the fish have the same appetite to eat. Probably the time you are feeding them, they don't have enough appetite. So when you overfeed them or when you give them the same quantity you have been giving them and they don't eat everything, the consequences is that the leftover will be dissolved into the pond, introducing or increasing the ammonia and also reducing the oxygen, and that will lead to mortality. I want to talk about nutritional imbalance. The feed that, as you see them, the pelleted floating feed or whichever type of feed, they all have nutritional balance. So if the nutritional balance is wrong and you give them to your fish, you might cause mortality or tender growth. So make sure that the feed that you're giving the fish, they have this required nutritional balance, and that way you will be safe to say that your fish have gotten enough balanced diet and not overfeeding. And before I even proceed, watch out how I'm feeding my fish here. As you can see, I fed the fish 3 cups, and you know, the 3 cups, that's how I've been giving them. I could have just measured the 3 cups and pour in and move away, but I didn't do that. You realize that I threw 1 cup at a time and monitored how they consume. Then when they were ready, I gave them more till I gave them all the 3 cups. That's what we call responsive feeding method, and that is the best method to feed your fish. That way you can always avoid overfeeding. I have a video on that. You can check that one out in the channel. And please, if you have found value so far and you have not subscribed to my channel, please I beg kindly do so, and let's proceed. The fourth one is disease outbreak. There are times that there will be outbreak of diseases, and when that happens, the diseases can easily spread among all the fish in the pond. So make sure that you avoid that. And when you notice that 1 or 2 fish have been infected, try to isolate them and provide them with treatment. When they are okay, then you can transfer back to the fish pond. Or when you transfer your fish from one farm to another or from one pond to another, don't just come and add them to the rest of the fish. They might come with diseases, and that will also spread quickly around the pond. So make sure that when you bring new fish, quarantine them, observe them 2 or 3 days to make sure that they are healthy and they are okay before you add them into the pond. If you are able to do this, you are able to manage disease outbreak. And like they say, the earlier the better. And once you notice sign of diseases, you can easily treat them by providing bitter leaves or antibiotics or any probiotics that you can find, and treat them before the diseases spread around. Now the fifth one has to do with extreme weather conditions. If I say extreme weather conditions, if the weather is too hot or too cold, this affects the life of the fish. For instance, if the water is too hot, it reduces the oxygen level in the pond. And when the water is too cold, it also affects the metabolism of the fish. And for that matter, you will find the fish even lose appetite to take feed. Or they are very dull and they are very stressful. So to avoid that, if the geographical location is too hot, make sure you provide shade. That shade that will reduce the sunlight, and make sure that the temperature of the pond will not always go higher. And if it's too cold, you can also provide heaters to make sure the water is not that cold. And you can also have aeration systems and filtration systems. All this will help, especially if the water is too hot, to reduce, and then because the water will not be stuck and be circulating, it also help the water not get hot quickly. So if you do this, you will solve the problem of extreme weather condition. The thing we have to do is overcrowding. Overcrowding is when you stock your fish more than the capacity of the fish pond. You say you overcrowd the fish. So to make sure you avoid overcrowding, you need to know the size of the pond, which quantity of the fish that should be stocked in. Because when you overstock them, the consequences is that there will be competition for resources such as oxygen and other parameters. And for that matter, the fish will be suffocating. And the overcrowded fish will also produce more waste. And when there's also disease among them, it easily spread out. And overcrowding is also leading to cannibalism. And all this, you are going to lose your fish a lot. So make sure that you do not overcrowd your fish, and make sure that you know the right quantity of fish to put in the pond at a time. If you are able to manage overcrowding, you will avoid mortality. The seventh one is predation. Predation is when living organisms attacks and consume fish. They could be birds, mammals, lizards, snakes, reptiles, and all these things that feed on fish. When they get access to your fish pond, they pick up the fish and consume them, and you are losing fish. Apart from even picking up and consuming the fish, sometimes when they get into the water body, they can also leave contamination, and that contamination can even lead to more mortality, because if there's disease outbreak, you might be losing all your fish. So make sure that you prevent predation by providing predators nets that will prevent birds from entering, or fencing so that reptiles and others cannot have access to your fish pond. If you do that, you are also going to prevent another form of mortality. The eighth one is toxic substances. When toxic substances gets into your fish pond, it poisons the water and the fish, and you are going to find your fish dying. For instance, if you are spraying pesticide or weedicide around your farm, and you are not careful, and wind blows the chemical into the pond, you are likely to contaminate the water, and that will lead to poisoning. Or if there's industries around, the production or the waste of the industries can also affect the fish water and therefore poisoning them. So make sure that when you are spreading weedicides or chemical, pesticide or any chemical, do not make it closer to your pond, and to avoid toxic substances being contaminating the water body. Or make sure you don't always put anything in the pond, because such thing, even including strangers' hand or even your hand, can even have contamination that can contaminate the water in the pond. So if you're able to avoid these two, you'll be able to avoid poisoning your fish. The ninth one is algae blooms. Algae is living organisms. They are plants that grow on the surface of the fish pond. And when this grows, the negatives is that when it dies, it decays and decomposes into the water body. And it also competes for oxygen in the water. And all this affect the oxygen level and affect the water quality. And the water quality also leads to diseases. When they die and decay and decompose, it also adds dirty, and then the water is not conducive for the fish. And algae bloom is growing when there's excessive nutrient in the pond, like nitrogen and phosphorus. So make sure that, and these are also coming from when you overfeed them. The leftover feed, as it dissolves, it adds more nutrient in the water, and that will also lead to the algae to grow very well. So avoid overfeeding, and make sure that you have aerators and filtration systems that will always take out the waste and the nutrient that will allow algae to grow. The 10th is handling stress. When you are sorting your fish, or grading your fish, or transporting your fish, or you are harvesting your fish, or whatever that you are doing that is taking the fish through stress, or you are disturbing them, let me put it that way in the layman's understanding. When that is happening and you don't handle the stress very well, it's going to lead to diseases and even mortality. When you are transferring your fish, or you're transporting them from one place to another, and you overstock them in the containers, they get stick to each other and they even injure each other, and that will also lead to mortality and weaken their immune system. Or you sort them and you don't sort them gently, that also leads to weakening of immune system. So make sure that when you are taking your fish through stress, you handle them with care, and when you handle them with care, you will be able to avoid overstressing them, and immediately after the stress, provide them with antibiotics or bitter leaves, and that will help you a lot. I have a video on how to apply bitter leaves. It's very important as a fish farmer to know and to always apply bitter leaves, so check that one out in the channel to learn more. The 11th point is thermal shock. Thermal shocks in the sense that when you suddenly change the water condition of your fish, they may receive shocks. And this can happen if there's rainfall and there's excessive flood or more water has entered the pond. Or you have to change the water in the pond and you just change the water once. Probably you have taken out the water, everything, and you change it once. So the sudden change of the water can cause shocks, and that shocks can lead to mortality. So when you're going to change the water, make sure that you don't change it once, you change it gradually. If I say you change it gradually, when you are taking out the water and it's left with small to finish, you can also add the inlet. As the inlet is entering, the remaining depth is going, and that means that the condition will not just change once. That will cause shocks in the fish. The 12th one has to do with cannibalism. Cannibalism also causes a lot of mortality in fish farm. And cannibalism is when fish attacks and consume other fish. When you have your fish, especially if they are on different sizes in the pond, the bigger ones always prey on the smaller ones. So the smaller ones become vulnerable. So in the situation where they are hungry, they always take the smaller ones. Or even if they are the same size, sometimes one is weak, the others will take advantage of it and consume it. And fish, especially catfish, they like blood. So even when they see blood from one of them and the other one is not strong, they will come together and consume that feed. So this you lose greatly. Sometimes you will come and see the remains on the pond and you take. Sometimes it will go under, you'll not even see it. It will be later that you see the skeletons or the bones and you'll be wondering. These are causes of cannibalism. So fish are eating each other. And to avoid that, make sure you frequently give your fish feed. When you give them feed and then you don't give them for a longer period and they become hungry, they try to find alternative, and the alternative is that they will consume each other. So make sure you feed your fish enough and you give them balanced diet, and you also make sure that you give them plant diet. That way they will not be used to meat that will encourage them to take or to consume each other. If you avoid cannibalism, you are also avoiding mortality. The 13th point or causes of mortality is inbreeding and poor genetic stock. This has to do with selecting the species that you want to stock. All the species are not the same, they are different. They might all be catfish, however, they are of hundreds of different species, and each has its own strengths and weaknesses. Some have very strong immune system that can always fight diseases. Some, their immune system is very weak and a little disease outbreak is spread and kill all of them. Some grow very well, some do not. So when you are stocking your fish, make sure you get the best species possible. So when you do so, the feed, when you are giving them, they are growing. And when you also keep them and there's kind of diseases, they have strong immune system that will affect or that will control the diseases. But if you stock fish with weaker immune system, you are going to encounter challenges and mortality. So make sure that you get your source of fingerling from trusted source and you will be safe to have good breed. The 14th point is mechanical failures. If you are using aeration systems, flotation systems, or aquaculture systems, all this has equipment. So if you don't keep proper maintenance of those equipment, they can easily break down. And when they break down and you are not careful, it's going to affect the fish, because since they are not functioning, flotation or aeration will not be going on and the lives of the fish will be in danger. So make sure you always keep your equipment maintenance at all time. Make sure that you have spare parts of those equipment so that in case there's a breakdown, you can fix the spare one and whilst working for the broken one. If you also have adequate systems and you don't always check it, chances are that some will spoil and you not even know, especially those that are underworking. So make sure it is part of your daily routine to always check to make sure that all your equipment or your mechanicals are working adequately and properly. And when that is happening and they are working properly and functioning properly, it means that you will not have problems of mechanical failure, because mechanical failure can also lead to mortality, which you want to avoid. The last and the 15th point you have to note, which is also causes of mortality in aquaculture, is poaching and theft. Thieves are also stealing fish. If you are not aware, I am telling you. I have a friend who stocked 2 ponds. Each one was 700 capacity. And children were stealing the fish. He didn't know. The time he got to know, almost all the fish were gone. The reason is that the fish are in water. So sometimes if they're even picking them and they don't pick them once or all, you might not even know. By the time you realize, everything is gone. And sometimes those thieves, in trying to steal, may even drop chemicals in the pond for the fish to die, for them to pick out. So even if they don't pick them out, they have poisoned the fish. All of them will die. So make sure you provide adequate fence. It could be wall or wire or whatever that will fence, so that not anyone can have access to the farm. You can also provide CC camera, security cameras, that will capture anyone who comes to the farm. So you can always monitor what is happening in your farm. Otherwise, you are going to lose a lot of fish to thieves. So to avoid that too, like I said, fence, provide adequate protection and security. Even if it means that employ a security guide to guard your farm, that is going to be superb. I've given you 15 causes of fish mortality and how to solve each of them. And I believe and strongly believe that you have been inspired and found value. Like I say, the ultimate goal of this channel is to share fish farming tips. And all I need from you to help the fish or the channel grow. So like, subscribe, share, please. I thank you so much for watching and stay for the next video. Thank you. My name is Abdulaziz Issa.